while persons are in the UK, they are very much aware of everything that happens in Anguilla and practically on a daily basis. In fact, I said at the meeting that sometimes they know more about what's happening in Anguilla before we do, who are here on the ground. And so I want to take the opportunity to thank all of those persons who came out, who would have spoken to us. And what is interesting as well is that many persons who have indicated after the meeting their interest in returning to Anguilla, their interest in being able to take up job opportunities, their interest in being able to be able to relocate back to Anguilla and live and work in Anguilla. Many of our young persons who are completing their degrees would also like to relocate to Anguilla. And so we would have gathered their information to be able to communicate with them and see how best we can facilitate and ensure that our people come back home and take up available job positions, and in fact, how we can create job positions to accommodate our people in this country. So and during the meeting as well, we discussed constitutional reform. One of the questions that came up would have been whether or not overseas voters are entitled to vote. And that is something that we'll be working through our constitutional reform. Once it goes to consultation, we will be gathering the views of persons, all Anguillians, to determine whether or not the time has come to allow our persons who are overseas to vote and under what circumstances they will be able to vote. Coming back home to Anguilla, we would have had the opportunity, and I would have announced during the last budget address, that the government of Anguilla had the opportunity to look at its spend and would have announced the ex gratia payment for all our civil servants and other statutory bodies. We also, while we were away, we have announced the Senior Spark for senior citizens, which is a $500 EC for persons over the age of 70. And these persons would be either persons who are currently under the Social Security scheme, and includes those who are not currently registered for Social Security. And as at date, we have about 180 persons who are not receiving Social Security, but who have benefited from this system. So in terms of how we can identify the spend, at the end of every year, every government has the opportunity to look at its budget and determine whether there are additional funds that have not been utilized during that year. And if there are additional funds, then the government of the day can look at ways in which those funds can be utilized. And this administration decided to allocate monies to areas that will assist the people of Anguilla in various ministries. And so you will hear this afternoon, certainly from the Minister of Economic Development, as well as the Minister of Infrastructure, how funds that have been identified as underspent, meaning additional funds available, have been utilized in their ministries. And so it is from those funds that we've been able to pay not only the ex gratia payment for the civil servants, but also the Senior Citizen Spark and the other programs that you'll be hearing about shortly. I will open the floor for questions at this point in time for me, and if not, if there are no questions at this point, then I'll ask the Minister of Economic Development to give a few words.
You mentioned, Honorable Premier, that one of the questions that were raised in the United Kingdom had to do with the fact that whether or not overseas voters are allowed to vote. How was that question answered in the UK?
Yeah, so my response to them was that currently under the Constitution, there is a residency requirement. Recently, the court would have identified what that means, and as a result of that, in the last election, those guidelines would have been applied. I did indicate as well that that discussion is to be further undertaken by way of the constitutional reform that we are moving forward with, where persons will have the opportunity to weigh in and ultimately decide what our new constitution would look like.
So am I to believe that the persons who would have come in from overseas who did not meet the requirement as of the present constitution would have voted unconstitutionally?
I'm not sure how you get that question from what I said. So, and I think that maybe you're trying to reopen what took place during the last election, even in previous elections. I'm not sure I understand what your question is, because it seems as if you're asking me whether or not people who came in to vote were unconstitutional. And I don't think that your answer is an appropriate question. Your question is an appropriate question. The reason for that is that persons could have come in who were students, who were entitled to vote. Persons may have been out of the jurisdiction for medical leave and came back in and they're entitled to vote. Persons who were in Anguilla resident for less than a year, who left Anguilla less than a year before, entitled to vote. So I think that your question probably needs to be refined if you, because I'm not sure what you're getting at.
What I'm getting at is based on what you just mentioned, that in the United Kingdom, your meeting in Slough, there were persons who were asked the question whether or not overseas voters are allowed to vote. And from that answer, from that question, you said that the government of Angola is now going through a constitutional reform.
What I said to you is maybe it's best if you go back and look at the video because it's there. And I will invite all persons who may be questioning what took place at that meeting in Slough so that you can understand full in terms of being able to understand fully what exactly took place, the question that was asked and how it was answered. But what I'm saying to you is that I would have expressed that under the Constitution currently, there is a residency requirement for 1 year. So that persons have to be residing in the country for 1 year before the elections, and that the court would have recently made a determination in relation to that. So that's one aspect of it. So when you ask about people coming in to vote, whether they came in illegally, I'm telling you that you cannot make that kind of conclusion because there are different reasons why people would have been out of the country who would have come in to vote on the last occasion.
We understand that.
Yeah.
But I am only trying to bring it together based on what we've discussed in London, based on what you just said. So I am just asking whether or not persons, whether they were away for medical reasons, that is one part. There are persons who live in the United Kingdom, live in the United States of America, live in other parts of the world who are Anguillians. Their names are on the registered list of voters, but they were out of Anguilla for the last 5 years, 6 years.
Okay, but I can't answer to that. So I don't think that at this press conference that is a question that you and I can engage in an answer on, because I can't tell you if you bring a list of names of persons, we'd have to ascertain who those persons are, how long they were out of the country for, whether or not they run afoul of the constitutional provisions, etc. But I want to say that for every person who is on the list that somebody may claim is not supposed to be on, that list, provisions are embedded to be able to object to a person on the list. So every party, every individual, including yourself, has the opportunity to object to persons who are on that list on the basis that they do not fit the constitutional requirements. So there's an obligation on any person who is expressing a concern, etc., to come forward and to object to names on a list. That's there for everyone.
You mentioned that the other ministers of government, like Mr. Bannerpool and Mr. Hodge, speak to this, but I just wanted to ask, based on the monies that were made available to pay the ex-gratia awards and the different Christmas awards, none of these monies are coming from the consolidated funds in terms of the reserve.
No, we have not dipped into reserves for any payments. And I think that you probably, if you would listen to the budget address, you would know that there was an underspend this year as a result of change in policy direction, etc. So those are the funds that were utilized.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to follow on in terms of constitution reform, what are some of the other areas that will be addressed?
In the Constitution, okay, so the Constitutional Committee is currently looking at all of those things. They have not reported to me as yet in terms of the areas, but I can tell you that the Constitutional Committee is also looking at the draft constitution that had been left when I was Minister of Constitutional Reform between 2015 and 2020. And those provisions would have included a number of things, such as the removal of the Deputy Governor and the Attorney General from having voting powers in the House of Assembly. There were also increased reporting in terms of financial implications, etc. So as of right now, the committee is looking at all of that wholesale. So I can't tell you exactly because I have not given them specific instructions to say focus on X, focus on Y. They are to provide an overall report based on their research, based on where the other countries, and you may be aware that other overseas territories are also undergoing constitutional reform as well. And so we need to be up to date. We need to be in a position where we are actually advocating for as much as possible full internal self-government for our people.
We know that the opposition had criticized that none of its members sat on the committee. Has Dr. Webster proposed any list of names for persons to sit on the committee?
Yes, at the end of the last House of Assembly sitting, Dr. Webster will have proposed Honorable Hayden Hughes to sit on the committee, and he indicated that he would get back to me in terms of adding an additional person.
Okay. All right. On the Sovereign Wealth Fund, could you give us a bit more information? You said you spoke with 3 entities.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so there were three organizations or 3 entities we have met with. One was out of Canada. The other one would have been out of the UK. But they both have a long history of established wealth funds. We also met with a private bank in terms of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But I think that bank may have been more focused in terms of estate planning rather than a sovereign wealth fund structure. But in terms of the others that we spoke about, yes, they all conduct sovereign wealth funds for other countries. Some more than others, meaning that there are particular institutions that have more sovereign wealth funds, and they have ideas in terms of how we can certainly create the structure. So what we said to them, we want to look at least 2 sovereign wealth funds, one for sustainability in the event of natural disasters, etc., that we can utilize. And we've seen in recent times with Hurricane Melissa how some countries were able to tap into a pool of funds that they would have separated for that purpose. So we want to do that as well. And we also want to ensure that whatever structure we set up, that we are able at some point in time to utilize the interest from those monies to be able to put into education, put into different areas of importance for the people of Anguilla. We want to ensure that it's also sustainable as well, so that irrespective as to which administration comes in, that those monies are there. So we know, for instance, Guyana, they've structured sovereign wealth funds. We know other countries have established sovereign wealth funds to be able to properly utilize monies that have come in. And so you may be aware that these funds that we're speaking about is as a result of the revenue that would have come in, which were unanticipated by and large for the .ai domain name.
Will the entire funds from the .ai go into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, or do you have any idea of how much in the first instance?
No, at this point, we were just fielding persons or entities that would be able to assist us in establishing that structure. We do not know what that would look like as yet. So this is just at the beginning, but certainly we'll come back to the public as we continue to have discussions and once we decide how best we're going to be able to move forward.
Coming out of the JMC, as usual, the communique has been issued, and some of the key topics they talked about were the public accessible register. And this is something that the UK is keen on the overseas territories adopting. So it's also stated that in the coming weeks, technical discussions supposed to be starting very soon, especially with Anguilla, BVI, and the Cayman Islands. You could comment on that.
Yes, so right. So it's the beneficial ownership register that the UK is keen on establishing, and many of the overseas territories have already moved quite a bit ways towards establishing it. Of course, there are always technical difficulties, etc. As you know, Anguilla does not have the extent of a financial services sector as some of our other brothers and sisters in the overseas territories. And so what we're looking at is ensuring that there is some sort of consistency in terms of the legislation that we put in place. And so we have spoken with the Minister for the overseas territories. He is well aware, and the UK is well aware as to the path that we're moving along. And so we expect that in the new year, whatever technical assistance will be available for us, we'll be able to utilize to be able to ensure that we put in place a beneficiary register that is fit and appropriate for the Anguilla context.
So every territory will have something different. I'll be following one same model.
There may be a general consensus in terms of approach. So at this point in time, we're still working through it, but the idea is that as close as possible, that the territories are aligned in terms of what is being disclosed.
I think Cayman Islands has this word legitimate access as opposed to really being arbitrarily being open,
Right, and we are looking at the Cayman Islands model.
the Cayman Islands model. There was also something coming out from the press conference as well, the GMC. It talked about the UK and OTs agreeing to develop partnership compacts between the UK and any territory that that wishes to establish this relationship.
Yes, thank you. So compacts, so let me back up a bit. There was a 2012 white paper, and that white paper generally sets out what the guidelines are in terms of a partnership between the UK and the overseas territories. And one of the tenets coming out of that is nothing about you without you, meaning that if there are decisions that are being made in the UK context, that there are discussions that will be held with the respective OTs before decisions are made, etc. In this year, we would have had discussions prior to the JMC with respect to updating the white paper from 2012 to 2025-26. For various reasons, the UK government has indicated that they are unable to move forward with a white paper at this point in time. However, they are interested in establishing compacts which would be similar to the white paper, but individualized for every overseas territory, because as we know, every overseas territory is different, unique, although there are some similarities that are consistent across the board. So what we've discussed, and certainly the position that Anguilla has put forward, is that while it is that we recognize that there are individual peculiarities with every overseas territory, that there should be a general framework such as the white paper that will govern across the board so that all territories are on the same footing, and then in addition to that have a separate compacts which would be specific towards the peculiar needs of each territory. And so that is what Anguilla has advocated for, and I believe that that is what the OTs in general are in agreement with.
Do you find that the relationship between the UK and the overseas territories has improved, remains stagnant?
The question is improved from what? I'm not sure the frame of reference, but I can tell you that Anguilla is in a different place than where we were between 2015 and 2020 when I sat as a Minister of Government, and I would have attended the JMCs during that point in time. And I also would have been present in the UK at the time that Brexit would have taken place. The decision came down on the eve of the JMC starting. But I can say that as the first Joint Ministerial Council for me as Premier of Anguilla, I thought it was very good. I thought that it was quite comprehensive. I think that the Overseas Territories Minister has tried his best and is working hard to ensure that not just Anguilla, but the overseas territories as a whole are seen and appreciated. And so it was a very productive series of meetings in the UK, in my view.
At the community meeting, I think Ms. Clough, she spoke about having an office, a diplomatic office for Anguilla,
Yes.
similar to the other OTs.
Yes, thank you for that. One of the things that we've looked at for a long time is that Anguilla does not have an established place of abode in the UK. So the other territories have either rented apartments or freehold buildings where they can, not rented apartments, rented premises or freehold premises where persons can come who are from their overseas territories can come and meet with them. Information is dispersed, etc. We currently don't have a space of that nature in the UK. And so what we find is as UK Anguilla reps are changed, information is not necessarily kept. And so it would be ideal if we had one location where information is kept irrespective as to the representative at the time, but also to be able to allow for a contact person in an established area to be present, to be available with a team to help in particular, our students, our people who relocate to the UK, whether temporarily or permanently for the purposes of medical attention, schooling, etc. And so it is time that we reach to a point where we have somewhere that our people can go to for guidance and support in the UK. And so yes, we are looking at that, and we have looked at that while we were in the UK at the possibility of establishing a UK office.
You know, after Brexit, the territories lost access to the EU funding, and this is something that keeps coming up at the meetings. Anything relating to Anguilla in this regard?
Yeah, so that was raised as well. We would have put it on the table, as I mentioned. The day after Brexit, we would have traveled to Brussels to speak about that EU funding when that decision took place in, I can't remember what year, 2017, 2018. I can't remember the year for Brexit, but we would actually have traveled to see and explore what was possible. And at the time, the UK government would have given an undertaking that those funds would be replaced by the UK government. And it was for a time. However, we would have been advocating as a group in terms of being able to access EU funding in some way, shape, or form, and that is done by way of partnerships as well with EU member states, EU member countries, but also funding additionally from the UK in terms of filling that gap. So notes were taken, discussions were had, but there was no formal decision made in terms of accessing additional funding in that regard. You may be aware that the UK budget was the address was delivered as well on the Wednesday during the middle of the week, and so the UK itself is experiencing a little bit of turmoil in terms of what came out of that budget.
We also know that crime was front and center as well.
Yes.
The governor said you all lobbied hard for the acquisition of a police boat.
Yes.
Yes, which he hopes to at least get word sometime by next year.
Yes, that is correct. So the one of the things that we would have placed on record our appreciation for to the UK government would have been the investment in security here in Anguilla. So we are aware that we have our radar system that is set up here. We also have the National Emergency Center that is up and running, and it has received awards for being at the forefront of excellence. And we also have had, of course, the police officers which have come to Anguilla, the UK officers, and some still remain here in Anguilla at this point in time. Some of those funds have been utilized to some of the monies have been used towards funding those police officers' presence here in Anguilla. And so there has been a focus in terms of security, and there is a commitment to continue to assist Anguilla in terms of assisting with the security issues that we have. It was front and center, not just for Anguilla, but also for all of the overseas territories, because there are some consistencies that we're seeing that exist, and concerns, of course, as to the transshipment or the shipment of guns and drugs, etc., and overseas territories being in the center of that shipping, those shipping methods.
Yeah. And what about the CCTV?
So I will ask the Minister of Infrastructure when he's speaking to give an update in terms of CCTVs. But again, that is something, it's being funded by the government of Anguilla. And so I'll let the Minister speak to it.
All right. That's it for now.
Madam Premier, on my earlier questions. I am to ask, would the government of Anguilla, the AUF administration, consider absentee voting as one of the conditions for the new reform?
So we will wait until the outcome of the Constitutional Committee and their suggestions and recommendations before we can answer that. That's not for the elected members, because we've established a committee to do that work and to provide us recommendations as to that. We have not given them any focus in terms of what they are to provide to us in terms of recommendations like that.
Well, I thought the government would have had an input.
But that's the point I'm saying. So the way in which the committee does their work is by way of consultation on various issues. And the committee is well aware that the issues as to voters and the status of voters, absentee ballots, etc., is an issue that is front and center. And so we have no doubt that that communications will come to us, that recommendations one way or the other will come. And if not, we will certainly be asking for them.
In terms of the committee, how can persons reach out to this committee with information, suggestions?
Mr. Stanley Reed is the chairperson of that committee, and so you're free to reach out to him and provide whatever comments, questions, recommendations you may have.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Stasm Hall of Class FM. Madam Premier, during your presentation, you spoke about modern democracy,
Yes.
which gives us the indication that we are living in an ancient democracy. You could please expound a bit more on that for me, please, as in terms of...
Sure.
Yeah.
So when I spoke about modern democracy, I would have highlighted the various areas in which we can look at ensuring that we have a modern democracy, and that is in relation to transparency and accountability, the principles of good governance, ensuring that our young persons, that our various segments of society have the ability to weigh in terms of the political decisions, but also constitutional reform, ensuring that we have our financial regulations, etc., up to speed. So there are a number of factors that you look at in determining whether or not you have a country that has or is on its way towards modern democracy. And also, of course, the idea of being able to control and determine your own future, right? And so when I looked at the concept of modern democracy and I compared it to the Anguilla context, I would have gone to the Constitution and would have outlined in the Constitution a number of factors which questions whether or not Anguilla has reached to a point of modern democracy, whether it could be said to represent the idea of a modern democracy. And that includes the fact that you have the deputy governor and the attorney general who are voting members. They vote in executive council and they vote in the House of Assembly as well. And those persons are not elected. And so I would have spoken about the fact that those persons in the positions themselves were voted during the GST debate, where the majority of elected members voted against the GST, but it was passed by including the Attorney General and the Deputy Governor at that time. And the idea of no taxation without representation. And so the concept being that any bill of a tax dealing with taxation ought to be brought by the elected members of a country and not by those who are selected. So that was just one aspect. Another aspect was that the governor sits as the chair of executive council, but also bills that are passed in the House must be approved by the governor at the end of the day. Or even if there is a bill that the governor wants, ultimately that bill could be passed and signed into law. So our existing constitution has gone beyond its time. It is a 1982 constitution amended from time to time, 1991, and then again in 2019. But for the most part, the powers of the governor, as they currently exist, do not adequately represent a modern democracy.
Okay, I know you said that a committee was put in place for constitutional reform. So I would assume that you do not want to reveal or divulge too much information to the general public as it relates to that. My question is, right, you guys were democratically elected by the electorate. But at the same time, your government is not in the position to hire or to fire someone after you were elected by the people. Now, the person who makes that decision were not elected. Is there something that this committee is discussing where it could give the government more leverage or leeway to make those sort of decisions?
Yeah, so just as a backdrop for persons who may not be aware, under our existing constitution, the governor, through the office of the deputy governor, hires and fires public servants. And there was a rationale that was given for that, and that was to avoid political victimization once governments change, etc. We know some countries where, depending on which political party is in, then the public servants who are in positions are removed, and then their supporters come in, etc. So that was created in our constitution to avoid that. The question is whether or not we've come of age, whether or not that's something that ought to be changed in our new constitution, where you give the authority to someone else other than the governor to be able to make that determination. So that's all part of the discussion, the review that's going to be taking place. And so we have to remember, though, that as long as we remain as a British overseas territory, the UK government will want some sort of ability to be able to ultimately make a determination on certain matters, if needs be. What was advocated during the Joint Ministerial Council is that in the UK, when you have misfeasance or malfeasance by elected members, it is not, they don't have a governor or someone that steps in and removes, etc. So why is it that that's the case in the overseas territories? And so there is a rationale for arguing that there has to be self-sustaining structures that are set up to be able to address those issues. So all of that is being looked at with the Constitutional Committee.
So if someone within your ministry, okay, let's assume you're the Ministry of Finance, there's some sort of embezzlement or pilfering or fraudulent transaction will transpire within that ministry, you cannot put it to the governor that you want that person to be out of your ministry?
Most of the decisions, what the Constitution provides is that decisions are done in consultation, certainly as it relates to the ministers of government. We're talking about public servants versus ministers. So the ministers are elected and the portfolios are appointed in consultation with the governor by the premier, the leader of government business. Public servants are different. They are appointed by the governor or through the deputy governor's office to the exclusion, for all intents and purposes, of the ministers of government. In the case of the permanent secretaries or senior public servants, then yes, there would be a discussion on that for the most part in terms of what their proposed action is. But they're different. So public servants, elected, two different approaches.
Because I know you said the entire thing was constructed trying to protect persons from victimization, but there are some persons in government who are loyal to their party as opposed to being loyal to the government. You understand?
Right.
I mean, you find sometimes people work within the government and they divulge information to the political party to support, and they don't be loyal to the government, which is supposed to be loyal to the government, irrespective of which political party you support.
That's correct.
So that is why I asked those questions.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. And you will get that at the end of the day, we're all humans. There's human nature that comes into play. We hope not, but the whole idea is that for the public service to act and to perform irrespective as to which political party is in. And so the question is whether or not that in fact happens. And so every political party will tell you that, that there are those persons that they feel are politically motivated that may not support their particular political party.
Thank you.
So we can have the opportunity afterwards, after all the ministers.
I just want to ask one follow-up question that has to do with the reform, whether or not in this whole reform, some consideration may very well be taken to make way for us going into independence. Because with all that was said here this afternoon, based on the minute changes that has to be made, I'm wondering somewhere in this whole scope of things that independence has not been factored in.
Yeah, I think that every administration talks about eventually going independent and setting themselves up. Our focus right now is to create a constitution for a greater internal self-government. At the end of the day, it is my view that we need to ensure that our people are prepared. There's an exercise that has to take place. It is not exclusive, meaning that the discussions in terms of independence can take place simultaneously while we move towards a new constitution which reflects the vision and the wishes of the people for greater internal self-government, at the same time moving towards independence.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll now hand it over to the Minister of Economic Development.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon to the media. Good afternoon to Anguilla. I would have recently traveled with the Premier to the GMC, so I'll start there. The Joint Ministerial Council was a productive and insightful series of engagements for Anguilla. I want to begin by acknowledging Mrs. Blandel Clough, whose representation was nothing short of phenomenal. She continues to be a powerhouse for Anguilla in the UK. Well connected, very well respected, and deeply committed to advancing Anguilla's interests. One of the most significant moments was observing our Premier engaging directly in discussions on constitutional reform and many other matters. It was immensely valuable to sit in the room with fellow Caribbean OT premiers from Montserrat, TCI, Bermuda, BVI, and the Cayman Islands. Our premier represented us extremely well. Her style, her clarity, and her delivery continue to stand out. As part of my interventions at the GMC, I spoke about the long-standing issue of our Anguillan athletes still training on a grass track. And the reason why I would have brought that up is because I would have just seen a release just prior to going into the GMC, a release by the governor's office in Anguilla talking about the OTs sending more athletes per capita to compete in the Commonwealth Games than major countries with populations in the millions of people. So I used the opportunity to speak about Anguillan athletes wearing the British flag being of value to the UK, that it is time for the UK to pour some of those returns back into Anguilla. So even though we have a bid in with World Athletics, the United Kingdom benefits directly from our world-class athletes. I would have made the point that Anguilla is a proven talent-producing nation, just like Jamaica. Our athletes consistently perform at world-class levels. So while we continue to wait on World Athletics, almost 3 years now, we made it clear that we cannot remain stalled. We have to deliver a proper track for our athletes here in Anguilla. I also raised the issue of water, emphasizing that Anguilla is not sitting back and waiting for handouts. We have already earmarked 9 million EC dollars of our own resources towards strengthening the network. The UK has responded positively, setting aside £1 million. And at the GMC, I was also informed that there is scope for even more assistance in 2026. So we will be following up on this very shortly. On waste management, I presented the steps we are taking at Carito and the wider transformation strategy for our environment. There is growing interest from partners willing to explore financing for specific components of this project. Again, Ms. Clough is indeed vital as it relates to searching and seeking major donors and securing financing for our project at the Carito site. We also had the UK Anguilla meeting, as mentioned by the Premier, where we saw record level attendance. The Premier and I presented on our ministries, followed by a robust question and answer session. Much of it focused on healthcare, which reflects the concerns and engagement of our diaspora. We were warmly received and we appreciated the hospitality extended to us throughout our time in the UK. While there, we took advantage of the opportunity to go on a trade mission. So over the past week, while we were in the UK, our delegation continued strategic engagements with major food retailers in the United Kingdom as part of our broader market diversification agenda. These discussions were aimed at securing stable, affordable, and high quality supply options for Anguilla's importers. And the key word there is options, because we continue to be heavily reliant on one source market. There's a need for us to diversify some more. One of the highlights of our meetings was with Sainsbury, a major UK export retailer with a product portfolio of over 12,000 items, including dry goods, frozen foods, meats, cleaning products, and where shelf life allows, fresh foods. They introduce 1,000 new products every year, sourced from 57 different companies, and are supported by 2,700 manufacturing facilities worldwide, including UK beef production, amongst others. Importantly, there are no quotas required with Sainsbury, which gives our importers full flexibility to choose the products they need. We also examine Sainsbury structured brand tier system from standard stock to premium organic, health focus, and specialty dietary lines, while ensuring a wide range of affordable and quality assured products. Sainsbury and other UK exporters are already exporting to Bermuda, to the British Virgin Islands, and also to Barbados. And this trade mission supports our goal of finding new trade pathways for our local importers here in Anguilla. So some follow-up actions now include conforming logistics routes, ensuring products meet certification and manufacturing standards, and requesting full catalogs and pricing models, and of which we will definitely share all of this with our local importers here in Anguilla. So our importers will soon receive the product listings and options that arise from these engagements to benefit from stronger, more diversified trade partnerships, and provides real advantages for businesses and consumers across Anguilla. Bringing it back home now, economic development, we would have announced an extra 10 business grants. We have awarded 10 additional businesses, the sum of 10,000 EC dollars. This is a grant policy that was first launched in October. Because the initial call received such a high number of applicants, just under 40, we looked for savings across other departments and ministries to ensure that more of our small businesses could benefit. This allowed us to give 10 more entrepreneurs an early Christmas present in the form of a 10,000 EC dollar grant. And importantly, because this is a grant, this does not have to be repaid. I was asked a few times if when you get a grant, if it means you have to repay it. No, a grant means you do not have to repay. So just to make it clear. So congratulations are in order to list the 20 businesses. 18.63 Biodiesel, Island Chill Garden Lounge and Plant Nursery, NBB, Pure Co, Hillside Treats, The Pink Spot, Quality Farms, Island Garden Greens, Lady D Boutique, Cheesecaking, Arts by Tangi, AXA Quick Pick, My Anguilla Experience, Healing Hands, Explore Anguilla Gateway, TK Exclusive, Luminaire Kayaking, Charis Richardson Vending Mac Machines, Lady Empress, and Quick Stop. So as you can see, it's a diversified set of businesses, and I want to say thanks to the committee for their work in seeing this through. And I encourage those businesses that didn't make it through to the top 20 to reapply when we open up the call again for more business grants in 2026. So for my ministry, I'll stop there and I'll take some questions.
Good afternoon again. Mr. Hodge, you spoke about the trade relations and you mentioned the DR. Are there any conversations with Guyana as well?
Not at this point. We're very much open to that, but at this point, we have not gotten in touch or reached out to anyone in Guyana as it relates to having trade conversations.
We know coming out to the GMC, the Premier mentioned earlier, well, in the previous videos coming out to London, she spoke about the fishing licenses, and probably this will be one area government will be looking to explore. Do you, can you expound a bit more on this?
Yeah, we've made a good contact in the Falkland Islands, and we would have also expressed directly to the FCDO Minister, Stephen Doughty, the need for us to engage with the Falklands, and if there are any technical assistance that can be provided, whether it's from the UK, whether it's directly from Falkland Islands, that we are definitely interested in exploring those options right away. But we have made a good contact in the Falkland Islands, and upon returning, it's just for us now to follow up and ensure that we deliver on the exploration as it relates to implementing such a program here, where we can capitalize on fish licenses, exploring beyond 100 miles into the 200 nautical miles of fishing.
Do we have any data on how many persons and nations access our waters?
I don't have any data on that. It was always said that there are some trawlers out there, wherever they're from. We keep hearing that they're out there from some of our local fishermen who would go out. They would see some vessels from time to time. They would make some reports. But as it relates to actual data, I'm not in possession of such.
Okay.
Still on the local scene, Honorable El Hajj, I noticed at least one particular supermarket on Anguilla, close to us here too. They don't have no price tags on their goods. Is this a requirement under the law? Or if it's not, then could some sort of legislation be put in place to ensure that that happens across the board?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fair for prices to be on the shelf. It is something that we can look into. If you can, offline, just give us the name of that supermarket. I'm sure the Consumer Protection Department will definitely reach out to see how, we can enforce such.
And as related to the GST relief that was granted to the people of Anguilla right after coming to office, would you care to share with us here this afternoon whether or not you believe that the government has met its objective in pleasing the people, for want of a better word, where that is concerned?
Certainly. I mean, we hear of the many stories of savings, particularly at the hardware level, where many people who are building, their homes, building businesses, they continue to express and show us, their receipts, how they have saved thousands of dollars, because when you go into the hardware store, it's mostly big ticket items, if especially if you're building. So the savings as it relates to construction is very much evident, and even, eating out, families eating out. that 13% is completely removed from the bottom of the receipt, which means that, if they go out to a restaurant and it's a serviced restaurant, then they only pay, the service charge. The GST is not added to the final price. As it relates to supermarkets, unfortunately, coincidentally, we have been dealing with the increase globally with the tariff wars that have been taking place. So at that level, we have not seen, I guess, some big savings, but we continue to monitor it. The unit would have told me this morning that their report is pretty much done. They just need to tidy it up some more. So we'll be able to release exactly what transpired from August 1st to now. By next press conference, I'll be able to openly share that entire report. Of course, it will be redacted. It won't have any supermarket names, but we'll be able to report what really took place since August 1st to now as it relates to supermarkets.
I can concur with you, so that as it relates to building material, there is a reduction in the cost, but where the supermarkets are concerned,
Yeah.
it is obvious that there is an increase in the cost of goods, even from the pricing.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
from the
And
pricing.
we'll get to the bottom of it. We'll understand exactly what transpired.
Very well, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hodge. In your recent visit to the UK, you said that the issue of water was raised. What sort of contribution the UK is prepared to make to the advancement of water in Anguilla?
Well, so far the UK, they've committed and provided 2 tranches of £500,000 each. So that equates to £1 million thus far, and that it is very insignificant when you look at the grand scheme of things, where the entire system would cost us upward of $50 million EC, right? But we are appreciative of every contribution, of every form of assistance. So we are grateful to the United Kingdom, to the governor's office for their commitment to sending us £1 million to contribute. I would have spoken to the governor in the UK, and she would have allotted me that there is scope for some more funding to be made available in 2026. So I'm looking forward to discussing it some more in more detail to see at what financial figure that will come at. Yeah, but they are seeing us, taking the first step, and not sitting back and waiting for a handout, so to speak.
I listened briefly to a presentation I think you made in Slough. And while you addressed that gathering, I think you made mention, I don't want to quote or paraphrase what you said because I don't remember exactly what you mentioned, but I think you said something to the fact that as it relates to fishing, that Anguilla has, I think, was 250 nautical miles or something to that effect.
Yeah.
What contribution or what the government is doing to assist fishermen in terms of, and fisherwomen, because you spoke of the fisherwomen too, to help in regards to fishing in that region?
Yeah, we have to sit down as a team as we go into 2026 to devise some strategies as it relates to what targeted support we can actually lend to fishers and farmers. I know there is in existence right now a policy that is between government and the Anguilla Development Board. This allows fishers and farmers to access capital at a very low rate of interest. I think it's about 3.75% interest at ADB. So fishers and fisher folk, they can go over to ADB and apply for this loan package that is supported and guaranteed by the government of Anguilla. We definitely need to update our fishing legislation, and as we seek to assist the sector, we'll see how best we can help all fishers.
And my final question is, as it relates to that project in the East, I think you spoke about it a few months ago. I think at the last press conference when you were here, you said that you spoke to the investors via Zoom, and you guys were supposed to have a follow-up meeting. How that meeting went, or did the meeting transpire, or
Yeah.
what has happened since
Yeah.
you spoke to them on Zoom?
Yeah, we haven't had that follow-up meeting as yet. So I'm still looking forward to that.
Have an idea when that meeting will take place?
No, we haven't actually set it as yet. Shortly after, I would have left to go to the GMC.
Mhm.
So that would have been priority at the time. And now that I'm back, there's time now to make the connection to ensure that it happens before the year's out.
Have an idea when you're gonna reach out to them?
I mean, this week.
This week?
Yeah.
Certain?
This week.
Thank you.
Okay, so if that's it for me, pass the mic over to Mr. Richardson.
Pleasant good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's definitely my pleasure to provide an update on some of the projects currently underway within the Ministry of Infrastructure, and I span across natural resources also. As it relates to road development, the South Hill Road to Jeremiah Gums Highway, the contractor has begun installing docks and curbs on the eastern side of the section of the road heading south. They have also started paving the road surface on the east lane. The estimated time for completion is April 2026. Pole and the utility lines relocation is ongoing, with majority of these relocations will occur this week. As it relates to the Sandy Hill Road, B's construction has been awarded the contract for this construction of the Sandy Hill Road. So B's construction is a contractor. Contract will be signed this week. A walkthrough will be conducted this week with the contractor, DOI, and the surveyor to plan the work and agree logistics for traffic management. Pre-construction activities and excavation will begin in December, which is this month. So you can expect some activity in the Sandy Hill area as it relates to the Sandy Hill Road this month. Procurement for the pipes for all road projects. Government of Anguilla has a new policy, and that's to install underground pipes for all utilities for all new road projects under this current administration. The Eastern Caribbean Trading Inc. from Miami has signed the contract for the supply of pipes for all road projects in 2026 and going forward. Lead time for the delivery of these pipes is 4 weeks after the contract has been signed by all parties. As it relates to the building and housing and construction area, projects that recently returned from tender, which would be the LBCC, the retrofitting of the office space for the festival's office. LBCC, construction of office space, and that's for the second floor extension. There are various projects that are currently out on tender and that are due back this week. DNR, the installation of fencing, that's the Department of Natural Resources, installation of fencing to secure agriculture grounds. No bids received and have to be retendered. Department of Water Services, construction of storage building, bid closing date is the 9th of December. Department of Water Services, construction of office building, bid closing date, 9th of December. Zaneta Haven, construction of boundary wall, bid closing date, December the 10th. And the NCBA building, retrofitting of the space for office accommodation. The bid closing date is also December the 10th. As it relates to the post office, the repainting of this building, there's also a tender, and the closing date will be December the 10th. Current projects that are worked to enable and issue tenders in this week is the construction of a concrete roof extension on the Maiku, that's on the eastern wing of the building. So it's currently is galvanized, and we're gonna make it a concrete structure, the roof. Some of the projects that are ongoing, completed tenders and contracts awarded. Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School, the technical block, construction is ongoing. Completion date for that is August 2026. The Government of Anguilla office accommodation, the retrofit of the 5-mile building, that's progressing well. Completion should be January 2026. HMP, construction of a workshop area. Completion should be done in March 2026. The Royal Anguilla Police Force, construction of office space. Completion should be also in March of 2026. Zeneda Haven, clearing of land for the site. That should be commenced this week, December the 8th. Completion for that will be this month also, December. Demolition and repurposing of the steel frame building at Blowing Point basketball court. That's to commence the week of the 8th and completion in this month. The retrofit of AG chambers and Rwan building for office accommodation. That will be the 8th of December also, with completion in this month. Recently, we have been conducting a groundwater management plan. We had the final in the missions for this project towards sustainable and climate resilient groundwater resource management in Anguilla. So some of the key stakeholders that are working with MICU are the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Water Services, Department of Health Protection, and also the Department of Physical Planning. And some of the key outputs derived from the project, the Integrated Water Resource Management Plan, National Groundwater Resource Management Plan, Site ID and Groundwater Quality Monitoring Plan, and recommendations to update of the National Water Policy, and also groundwater and seawater abstract regulations. As it relates to the Ministry of Natural Resources, we are pleased to provide an update on the ongoing work to strengthen national food security and to build a local agricultural capacity. In this area, 10 additional shade houses has been ordered thus far, and this is an additional 10 shade houses. Additional fruit trees for the fruit orchard have been placed. And starting next year, we'll be hosting our annual agricultural exhibition day. And this was something that used to be done in the past, but it kind of went away a bit. So we are looking to actually revive that starting next year, where persons can come and showcase their produce and also their catch. Thank you for your continued interest and support. I look forward to sharing more updates as we make further progress and development within the different ministries and various departments. We'll now take questions if we have any.
Richardson, you mentioned the South Hill to Jeremiah Gums Road. You said the completion date be April of 2026. We know that the road would have started under the previous administration. That date has changed in terms of what was proposed by the previous administration and whether or not any additional funds or funding had to be made available for its completion.
Well, as it relates to any additional funding, I'm not aware if there's any additional funding that is needed for the completion of the road. But I know there was some setbacks as it relates to the poles and stuff like that, so, but not as it relates to funding.
I see. You mentioned agriculture. The lands that were previously earmarked by the previous administration in the valley area, but everybody knows about, for the track and field, that is no more. I guess that's where the orchard is going. Any lands have been identified anywhere on Anguilla for a track and field? Or where are we, the government, with this track and field story?
Well, as it relates to the lands with the track and field, that would have someone from a different ministry have to speak to that. But
Beg your pardon?
someone would have to speak to that from a different ministry as it relates to the land for the track and field. I will speak to the what is currently going on there now, and it's not for a fruit orchard. It's actually just for short-term 3-month vegetable crops, and that's basically it. Not a fruit orchard. If I answer your question.
So who should I speak to concerning any proposed plans for the track and field?
If I could answer the question.
Yes, sir.
So the area that you're speaking about, and just for the public to be clear, we're speaking about just west of the James Ronald Webster Park.
That's
that
correct.
area that is cleared off. So that area was earmarked by the previous administration for track and field development. We have not made any change to that. So once World Athletics comes back and says, hey, we are ready to build this track in Anguilla, that land is still available for such. This administration is also looking at other areas where it can potentially be also located. So what is important here is that the track and field is a priority for us.
Mr. Richardson, you talk about a number of major projects. Could you tell us about the projects that will be coming on stream next year? What road projects are on stream for next year? You talk about the Sandy Hill Road. Are there any other roads planned for next year as well?
Well, I know there's the road from Mary's to the school. That road is going to come on stream. And there's also a project that we are currently working on, which would allow us the ability to actually resurface much more of the secondary roads. So that is something we'll be gladly to update the public about early next year.
You also spoke about the lane of pipes. Is that in regards to the water pipes?
Well, all utilities, for all
utilities? Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be going underground.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richardson. My only question is, right, I know you have been a part of the South Valley group. I think they had a basketball tournament sometime, I think it was sometime in July or June. I think the land was leased to you guys by, I think it was Ashley Data, something to that effect. So what's ongoing with that situation? Any more basketball will be coming on stream anytime soon?
Oh, definitely. If I would have Raven and Chudel last week,
Yeah.
and the amount of activity that is taking place on the court. Youngsters, you have kids that are in primary school, and you can have a lot of teenagers that are actually playing on the court. And even on the weekend, the folks from BSU and the Stock Valley community has been cleaning up and painting, and you could definitely see that the structure has been repurposed and have a facelift. And there's additional work we'll be doing in the next coming weeks where we'll be actually painting the benches and painting the walls, so, and then cleaning on the western side. So definitely we are putting a lot of emphasis in that area where folks could practice and in a safe environment and also in a clean environment. So we are definitely putting a lot of time and emphasis into that piece.
I know Joan Howard, right? I think he was here a few months ago. That guy who was a part of the Fab Five of Michigan State with Jalen Rose and the other guys. You're gonna bring him back anytime soon? You have any idea if he's gonna come back? He's gonna keep a coaching clinic in relation to that?
Yeah, most definitely. He's going to be back again, and that's going to be an annual clinic and an annual event that we're going to host every year.
Every year.
Every year.
Thank you. That's all.
one follow-up question on the basketball. You mentioned that down in Blowing Point, I wasn't here when Mr. Bryan was making reference to what is going on at Blowing Point, but if my memory serves me right, I think you said the building will be demolished. Is it all of the building or just a portion of the present structure at Blowing Point will be demolished?
That's a bit out of my scope, but just the steel structure will be, I don't like to use the word demolished, but it will be taken down and then a higher steel structure will go there. And that structure will be reused in somewhere else, in a different area. So it's not like it's a total waste.
Very well. I guess from the time you were probably a little boy, I guess you would have known about the indoor basketball facility that was supposed to be constructed just opposite Lansing Bowl Cultural Center below the Valley Primary School. It was supposed to be annexed to the school. The government of Anguilla has any plans in ensuring that that particular project is completed. I know there have been a number of field visits by officials from the Ministry of Maiku. I've seen them there personally. So I believe I've seen you there too.
Okay.
Where are we with that?
So you said you've seen me there and you have actually saw a couple of folks from Maiku, right?
Yes.
And you've seen that the area is cleaned up, right?
Yes, it was. You know,
Okay.
So I'm asking the next step.
So what we are looking to do is we had some engineers make a site visit, and they are currently examining the current state and the structure, of the building, and see how best we could progress it. We had one engineer give us a report already, and so we're just waiting on a second report from a different engineer as to how best we could proceed. But definitely, as a elected member for Valley South, I have keen interest in doing something in that area. Once the engineers have come back with their finding and it's fit for purpose, you could expect to see something there.
In terms of the basketball.
Depending on the engineer's findings, yes.
Very well. Thank you.
I now hand over to the Honorable Joseph Vanterpool.
Good afternoon, all. Pleasant good afternoon to not only my colleagues, those in the room, but to all Anguillians listening via whatever medium. I'll begin by responding to the question that was posed by the representative of Radio Anguilla regarding the national CCTV. This is a large-scale contract that we know comes not only with significant cost implications, but implications on crime, safety, and Anguilla. As a result, we want to ensure that we get this right. In terms of its current state, the contract, we've sought external advice on the contract to ensure that not only does the government of Anguilla get value from money, but that we get what is intended and can be guarded from a government's perspective as it relates to delivery of the project. While we're still receiving advice, I can tell you one of the things that has led to a bit of the delay is the fact that while the ministry is tasked with the delivery of the project, the funding and ultimately the control and authority lies with the Royal Anguilla Police Force, which falls under the portfolio of the governor, as we all know. So while we have to execute, there's been some logistics there, but I can assure you that things are progressing well. I would have spoken to the governor up until last week about the various challenges and how we can overcome and mitigate those, as well as up until the weekend, the ministry, legal advisors, as well as representatives on behalf of the contractor who was successful in winning the bid were in conversations. So even while the contract is not finalized and signed, we have given the bidder the authority to go ahead on the agreed upon equipment that we would like to get procured to go about mobilizing and securing it so that once a contract is signed, that isn't what triggers. So we're already progressing things along. Before I go any further, Minister Kyle Hodge would have spoken to the GST relief, and we would have acknowledged the significant savings as it relates to building and construction material. There's just one thing that I want to highlight because I don't hear it enough in the discussion, but I think it's a matter of significant importance and one of the biggest benefits of the GST relief that's not necessarily highlighted enough. When we go into the hardwares and we purchase construction equipment, hardware, etc., for building, we tend to look at the immediate cost. We can see that plywood, steel, whatever's on the shelf is materially 13% cheaper. We are seeing the cost savings. But the effect that we are not looking at is what does that mean in the long term? When people make significant investments, whether it's building a house, they often go to the bank, take loans, take mortgages, etc. So while we're looking at the upfront cost and the savings today, immediately on the shelf, the reality is if a young person wants to go to the bank and take out a loan or a mortgage to build a house, let's say they take out $500,000 to go and build and construct their home for their family. 13% of that $500,000 is $65,000. That's $65,000 that not only are they saving on in terms of immediate costs at the hardware stores, that's $65,000 that they will not be paying interest on for the next 20 to 30 years of their life. If you do the math and you compound that, they are saving themselves over $500,000 in terms of long-term repayment to the bank. That is $65,000 that if they don't have to take it from the bank, they can then invest it in furniture, fittings. They can start a business. I'm commending the Ministry of Economic Development for giving an additional 10 businesses 10,000 EC dollars. We're talking about 65,000 US dollars that people can have in their hands that they are no longer committed to paying in tax. We are not forcing persons to pay interest for decades on taxes to government. And I believe that that impact is one that's not spoken about enough, and that financial freedom and flexibility is one that truly gives opportunities to young people to progress. And that is the true nature and beauty of the GST relief that we have offered. I just wanted to highlight that point. Moving on to the substantial update from the ministry and following on from my colleague, the Honorable Cardell Richardson. As it relates to the opening of the airport terminal, I'm sure that this week is one that everyone is looking forward to and anticipating, and we should, because this is something that is not political. It's bigger than different administrations. It's a significant occasion of national importance. The official opening ceremony for the airport terminal building is scheduled to be held this Friday, December 12th, 2025. Now, I know that persons, I don't want to cause any confusion because persons would have heard me say that the airport will officially be opening on December 15th. So for clarity, if anyone is concerned, the ceremony for the opening of the terminal building will be held this Friday, December 12th, but the official operational, the building will be fully operational on Monday, December 15th. So while we are opening it on Friday, operations will actually commence at the new terminal building on Monday, 15th December 2025, for clarity. I would have been inundated with a number of calls today, as well as this is in addition to a few that I would have received over the weekend. And it was based on some remarks that a member of the opposition would have stated that they were not invited to the opening of the terminal building. Now, what I can confirm is during our time in opposition, there were many events that we were not invited to. And I fundamentally think that that's wrong. This administration feels that that is wrong. There was a committee put in place for the opening ceremony, and they would have created the invited list, the invitation list, and we would have ensured that all members that were duly elected by the people of Anguilla, including the opposition, and the honorable member who said he was not invited, were included on that list. After the number of calls, I made some investigations, and I can confirm that the member who would have made those remarks was contacted via phone last week to inform him of the invitation and instructed that a physical invitation would follow. Just prior to this press conference, I received confirmation that that member in particular would have received that physical invitation this afternoon. So seeing that a phone call was made last week and he knew that the invitation was forthcoming, I find it quite unfortunate to have certain aspersions cast to the public. But I give the general public my assurance that not only will we ensure that all opposition members are invited, I have an invitation in my card that if I need to physically deliver it myself, I have no problem doing so. In terms of recent milestones, The airport terminal building is substantially completed and currently undergoing a deep cleaning. Last week, the ministry would have facilitated several walkthroughs with stakeholders, which include the Anguilla Hotel and Tourism Association, various tourism partners, those responsible for our borders, which includes both customs and immigration, and the Anguilla Tourism Board, members of both the Ministries of Health as well as the Ministry of Finance, as well as more. On this note, I want to take some time seeing that the minister responsible for tourism is not here. We apologize for his absence. He is currently attending a Caribbean Tourism Organization event in Miami. And I would have had the pleasure of representing him and the government of Anguilla at the Anguilla Hotel and Tourism Awards that would have taken place this weekend that was gone. And I would just like to take this moment to congratulate all of the awardees as well as all of the nominees. And again, reaffirm that we wish you the best in terms of performance as well as service for 2026. May this be our best tourism year on record. With regards to the airport apron, the expansion to the apron was successfully commissioned over the Thanksgiving weekend, and very timely, a reason for us to give some Thanksgiving, because this new expansion adds approximately 95,000 square feet to the apron that already existed and that was operational. The handover of the various sections of the terminal building has been completed, and teams are currently wrapping up the operational readiness, or what we've been referring to time and time again as the ORAT. All security equipment is installed, tested, and the staff are being trained. Largely, most of the training has already been completed. The building network and fiber connectivity have been commissioned, and the facility is fully energized with power being distributed to all sections of the terminal building. In terms of the next steps, over the coming days, the current terminal will be stripped and be prepared for eventual demolition. Landscaping and other minor snag works around the new terminal and landside areas are ongoing, but they will not affect operations, the opening, or the commencement of travel through the new airport terminal building. The full project is expected to be closed out, including the remaining external works, by May of 2026. In relation to AI, just last week, I would have conducted a number of interviews and discussions at the ministry regarding AI and our .ai domain and how we intend to leverage it for future prosperity. One of these was with persons representing The Telegraph, a UK-based media house, about our .ai domain and how we tend to pursue our digital transformation journey. They would have been interested, they would have found out about Anguilla and be interested in coming and speaking with us following the BBC interview that was conducted a few weeks ago. This shows the power of not only our .ai domain, but the potential we have to leverage the story, the connection, and the impact of these domain revenues on national development. And when people hear the story, they are more likely to be interested in to come and support, further boosting our tourism numbers and arrivals. Last week, I also had a very engaging discussion. I have to thank my colleague, the Honorable Minister Kyle Hodge, for facilitating the introduction with an artificial intelligence architect and trainer who works intimately on Google's AI. And they do work for some US departments that I won't disclose at this time. We spoke not only about the potential for, again, AI development, digital transformation in Anguilla, but how Anguilla can effectively go about leveraging our competitive advantage and strategic position for the benefit of the nation. So we look forward to progressing these discussions and figuring out how best that Anguilla can leverage these opportunities beyond domain sales to affect generations to come for the better. With respect to energy and utilities, last week, from December 2nd to December 7th, the ministry would have hosted Mr. Nathan Hart, the project manager of Greenology Green Technology Incorporated here in Anguilla. Greenology is a Barbados-based company and has been contracted by the OECS Commission through the government of Anguilla to supply and install a solar system with a level 2 electric vehicle charger at the Aurelia Kelly Primary School. This initiative is fully funded by the OECS, and so we thank them for this support. During the visit, we would have conducted a series of site visits and meetings with the various ministries and stakeholders. These discussions centered around two key facilities. In addition to the Aurelia Kelly Primary School, we'd have also done visits and consulted with the Princess Alexandra Hospital. I would have mentioned at the previous press conference that government was looking internally to see how we can go about integrating renewable energy. And we would have realized that after assessing the electricity bills across the different ministries and departments, that one of the ideal places for us to start is the Princess Alexandra Hospital. I believe over a span of 5 months, we would have spent over $600,000 in electricity bills at the hospital. And beyond that, that is our only 24-hour health facility on island. So it's important to make sure that we have the means to be able to power it, even when our grid, due to hurricane or other circumstances, which we pray will not affect us anytime soon, may occur. During the visit, the team assessed both sites to confirm the readiness for the solar installations. They would have finalized the engineering designs, including a special ballast system for the school's concrete roof to avoid any structural impact to the roof itself. Consulted with the ministries of both education and health. Reviewed electrical integration and safety measures with particular attention to child safety at the school. Planned logistics for the shipping of the equipment, customs clearance, and securely storing them. And prepared for a 5-day training program to build the local skills in solar PV systems and EV charger maintenance. The next steps include procurement and the shipping of the equipment, which will begin immediately for the Aurelia Kelly Primary School, and installation and training will start early in 2026, with a completion target set for April of 2026. These projects will serve as models for the future renewable energy initiatives that the government is interested in pursuing across all government facilities. I would like to, at this time, once again thank the OECS Commission providing us the opportunity to receive such a grant and to engage Greenology for the supply and installation of the solar PV system and the charger at the Aurelia Kelly Primary School. I would also like to thank the staff at the Ministry of Infrastructure for their hard work, collaboration, and based on the reviews that I would have gotten from Mr. Hart, for their very, very kind Anguillian hospitality. He assured me that he was taken very well care of while he was here. Earlier, the Premier would have mentioned that across the different ministries, we would have reprioritized some of the underspends that we'd have to see how we can best increase the benefits for the people of Anguilla. One of these initiatives, or one way that we're doing that within the Ministry of Infrastructure and on behalf of the government of Anguilla, is by ensuring that everyone has lights for Christmas. We know that Christmas is a time that is festive, merry, but we also acknowledge that it tends to be a hard time for those who are most disadvantaged. So we've been collaborating with Anglic, and what we would have done is received a report as valid as Friday of last week of all of the persons who have been disconnected for non-payment of their bills and their inability to pay over the period of the last 6 months. So what the government will be doing, we will be making sure everyone has lights for Christmas. We will be reconnecting all of the persons who are currently disconnected for inability to pay, and then we will be issuing them with an electricity credit to ensure that not only do we turn on the lights, but they have some time to catch themselves while we ensure that going forward, we build a sustainable future for all. So with that being said, that's one of the initiatives we're doing through the Ministry of Infrastructure, and on behalf of the government of Anguilla, we'd like to say Merry Christmas to all of the persons who will be receiving that relief. And here I will end my update on behalf of the ministry and welcome any questions that you may have.
Honorable Vanderpool, I noticed you didn't mention anything about Anglic. Oh,
I did mention that we have been collaborating with Anglic on this relief measure, and we got reports up until Friday of last week. So I did mention Anglic, and we've been speaking very closely. But if there's anything in particular you'd like to ask me about Anglic.
yes, there are some things in particular concerning Anglic. For quite some time, there had been information out there concerning the Caracas Bay building that I don't want to say if it's owned. I don't know really what is the position up to now concerning the building, but I noticed just today a 4-foot pole had been planted just on the inside of the fencing on the north side of the building. So I believe some sort of work will be conducted there where that is concerned. So I am to ask, Anglic, that building will be used by Anglic?
So, thank you for the question. I actually referred to I would have received a number of questions relating to Anglic at the last sitting of the House of Assembly from the Honorable Member for District 6, Road South. And I was just referring to the responses that I got, which I believe should adequately respond to the question you have at hand. You were saying you're not sure about the building, what's the status of it? And as quoted as part of the response that forms part of the House of Assembly's public record, the property inclusive of land and infrastructure was acquired by Anglic on auction for approximately 2.25 million US dollars, and its appraised value of the time of acquisition was over 4 million US dollars. I'll go on to say it is estimated that the renovation work will cost approximately 800,000 US dollars. Upon completion, the property will exceed a market value of its appraised value at the time of acquisition. This was a response that I would have acquired from the board. As we know, I'm the minister responsible for utilities, but Anglic is a private company. But to facilitate a response to the honorable elected member who would have posed a question, I would have reached out to the board. So this is a confirmation. This response would have been given by the board, and it should confirm to you or clear up any ambiguity that the building has been acquired by Anglic far below market value, full cost, the intended cost of renovations, and that by the time the building is fully outfitted, it will be under its estimated value right now. So in terms of return for money and value of investments, seems sound.
Going back to a quote from Mr. Richardson, when he mentioned about a team going to the old basketball facility in terms making sure that it is fit for purpose in terms of the structure. That has been considered.
In terms of assets, I don't want to digress. I want to give you information directly from the board because, again, while we are the elected government, the board is in charge of the day-to-day operations, and I would like to keep that distinction between the ministry and the actual operations at Anglic. One of the questions that was posed to me by the honorable member was, has a comparative analysis inclusive of financial and logistic comparisons between constructing a modern fit-for-purpose building for Anglic against purchasing and renovating the Carisby building been undertaken? The response that I would have been given by the board, and that again I would have presented in the House of Assembly and forms part of the formal record, yes. Prior to the acquisition, Anglic assessed the option of constructing a new fit-for-purpose built facility. The comparative review took into consideration timelines, land availability, and operational requirements. The strategic urgency of securing an adequate facility support and consolidate Anglic's departments and equipment was central to the acquisition. The analysis demonstrated that purchasing and renovating the Carisby building represented a more viable and cost-efficient option, particularly given the immediate need for warehousing and administrative capacity. The decision was therefore guided by practicality, fiscal prudence, and long-term interests of the entity. And I hope that that answers your question.
No, it didn't.
You would have asked.
The reason why
you would have asked if anyone. You would have likened it to the basketball court facility. Asked if anyone went to check out the facility.
Yeah.
And I'm adding even more that not only did they check out the facility based on the question and response thing, and a full assessment was cast out, and it was determined that was the more viable and cost-efficient option.
I understand the part about the cost effectiveness, but I'm talking about health and security here and safety, because people are going to be using that building. People are going to be operating from within that building in terms of the structure, because I'm seeing a lot of demolition and knocking out here and knocking out there for within the Anguilla terms. So I'm wondering, because I have family, and maybe more people throughout Anguilla has family who work for Anglic. So in terms of the building when it's completed, if you're going to be knocking out this and knocking out that, whether or not the building and the physical is strong enough when it's completed, that's all I'm asking. I'm not asking about the cost.
Well, what I can say is, while I may not be an expert in construction, I'm also guided by the persons who are. And in speaking to the project manager and the persons who did assess the facility, I was actually impressed that they said for a building that's been that old, you can tell that the quality of the work that went into it because it's fully structurally sound. Any further questions that you have on
Fair
this, I would suggest that you either direct it to the board or to the project manager. Not because I don't want to answer it, just because I think that they would be in a better suited position to be able to answer you. But if there's anything that you would like me to ask of them and to bring back to a future press conference, you have my number and you know how to reach.
Fair enough.
Minister, you spoke about the underspans, and those persons who were disconnected will be reconnected. Do you have an idea of how many persons will be reconnected and how long the reconnection will be for? Is it just for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
So in terms of the number of persons, based on the report that we'd have received last Friday, the persons who were disconnected for inability to pay or non-payment is about 99 persons. So literally 1 person short of 100 that are currently disconnected. We intend to reconnect all of those persons. This will be subject, and they may have to reach out to Anglic prior to the reconnection, because we're also mindful that maybe some persons may be disconnected on purpose, but largely we feel like these are the persons who are more disproportionately affected. What we will be doing is clearing their existing balances, so bringing them to a zero balance, and then applying a credit so that they have a buffer going forward. So in terms of how long the reconnection will last, that's kind of hard to answer, in the sense that it will be dependent on their usage and how long the credit lasts for them. One person may have a $100 bill after 1 month. One person might have a $200 bill, and based on their usage, that will determine how long the credit will go.
I know you just said you want to keep things separate, but any update as it relates to the board's transition to renewable energy? We know they were seeking a loan from the CDB. Any updates that you can tell us?
Yes, what I can say is the CDB has their next board meeting on the 11th, and I have been in numerous conversations even over the weekend. The government as well as Anglic have been working hand in hand and assiduously to make sure that we provide CDB with all of the information that they need to make the best case to the board for the renewable energy project. Again, I stay in frequent communication with the president of the CDB, who is paying very keen attention to his team and ensuring that this project goes. And what I can say is that what we're working to is ensuring that this project is approved by end of this year.
I came across an article, I'm not sure if you saw it, I actually sent it to you a couple days ago, a week ago, in relation to the OECS Commission and the IDB, CDB collaborating, initiating discussions towards establishing a regional operation for advancing housing resilience in the Caribbean. Are we part of that, or is that specific to housing programs in some of the islands?
Well, we currently don't have any established housing programs here in Anguilla, but it is a conversation that we have been starting with the CDB. While we will be initiating this renewable energy project, this is the first of many proposed projects that we would like to work hand in hand on progressing. One of the things that I can say, it relates to a different program, but the CDB has actually unlocked an opportunity for us to access concessionary funding for the renewable energy project, where Anglic may be able to access green funding at an interest rate of 1%. And so we're capitalizing on all of these opportunities and really trying to push that through, but we're not closing the door on anything that may be afforded to Anguilla. So the housing project is one that we are looking to explore, but at this time, the full priority is just ensuring that this project is approved by the end of the year.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vanderpool.
Good afternoon.
You said that all members duly elected were invited to the opening ceremony for the airport. Will the opposition leader be allowed to speak, or any member who's a part of the opposition be allowed to speak? I know you're probably not in charge of protocol, but I'm just asking if any member of the opposition or even the opposition leader will be allowed to speak at the opening ceremony.
As I would have mentioned before, that there is a committee in place that is dealing with all of the arrangements for the opening ceremony. And I cannot say that I know if any of them are even interested or if they were asked to speak, but to be honest, that decision did not rest with me, it was with the committee. So at this time, I cannot say if that's the case.
You said, as it relates to Anglic, right? You said that while you guys are ministers, the day-to-day operations of Anglic are run by a board. Who does the board report to? Can the minister overrule a decision that is made by the board?
Well, the board is appointed to serve on behalf of the minister, and we know that, and really and truly, it should be on behalf of the shareholders. As we know, government is one of over 1,100 shareholders, but government is in charge of the majority of the shares of Anglic. One of the things that this administration would have done once being elected is actually reach out to minority shareholders and include their thoughts in our decision as to who to be appointed to the board, to ensure that for the first time, we do have representation just outside of the political will of the existing government. In terms of me saying or trying to create that separation between the ministry and Anglic, it's for a reason. I honestly feel that one of the biggest issues that we've been having with Anglic, and one of the reasons that the renewable energy transition that we're pushing to achieve now was not realized decades ago when Anglic was actually positioned to really lead and charge this, is because of political interference and because of ministers overreaching or political will going beyond what the board is supposed to do. And they're responsible for, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders and the well-being of the company. So yes, they do reports to us, but what I can say is one thing that is very key, not only in utilities, but particularly in renewable energy success, is the role of the regulator. The regulator for Anglic should be the Public Utilities Commission. And I think somewhere on paper they are, but they have never been, the regulations have never been fleshed out and the legislation hasn't been given teeth to allow them to operate as that. So currently at the time, as of now, the Public Utilities Commission, the PUC, basically only regulates telecoms. So we've also been having conversations with them as to the role of the regulator, because the regulator should be that person that sits between the government or the ministry and the utility itself to stop any undue influence from going or overreaching. It's kind of similar to when you think about democracies and the separation of powers. There should be some level of separation of power. While government of Anguilla may be the controlling shareholder, we are still but a shareholder, and Anglic is still a private company and not a statutory body, and as such, it should operate as such, as opposed to as operating as a statutory body.
But you say it should, right?
So what I'm saying is...
But my question is, right, could and should are two different words, obviously.
Yes.
Could the minister of Anglic overrule a decision that is made by the board? So let's assume the board want to fire the CEO, right? Could the minister get involved and intervene and say, look, that the CEO cannot be fired based on that power that the minister has?
Okay. So based on that, I'll differentiate between the should and could. A minister should not do that.
But he could.
But in terms of can, no.
He can't?
The charge lies with the board. And we've seen instances in the past where ministers have appointed boards, and then we've seen them go back and forth with the boards because they have different opposing views as to what should be done. Once the board is appointed, they are the ones with the responsibility. The minister, what we could do as government is, if the board is not functioning the way that we would like, and if we were serious about saying, oh, it has to be our way or the highway, this is our direction, the government could call a special meeting, and we could change out the board members who are opposing the direction of the government. But again, that goes back to, that's what we could do. Should we change out board members simply because they are not meeting the political will of whatever women fancy the minister at the time should have? You should not.
So the board reports to the government. That's what the board, or the minister who is responsible for Anglic.
Yes. There's also an electricity commissioner put in place, but we as a government do have a very good relationship with the Board of Anglic.
Who has the ultimate power in Anglic? There's a cricket team, and there's the captain and the vice captain. So the captain has the final decision to decide whether a bowler going to bowl or where a field to field.
As it relates to operations, the CEO is the operational captain. As it relates to Anglic and its direction, there is the chairperson of the Board of Anglic. As it relates to policy and direction, there's the Minister of Public Utilities, myself. So there are 3 different captains at different levels with different tasks.
Who is the ultimate captain?
Well, if you ask that question, I appointed the board.
You appointed the board.
But if they make a decision right now, that's contrary to something that I would like to see. They do have the power to do so. Do I have the power to change them? The government collectively does. Sorry, I'm struggling to understand what we're trying to get to with this line of questioning, though.
No, because the question I'm trying to ask, right? Okay, for instance, the day-to-day operations is run by the board, but the
Day-to-day
board,
operations are run by the CEO.
but you said the board in your presentation. Maybe you made a mistake.
The day-to-day operational matters are handled by the CEO.
But what I'm saying
The
in your
guidance and direction. So, for example, who hires the CEO? The board. The CEO cannot hire himself.
yes, sir, but what I'm saying during your presentation, you said that the day-to-day operations are run by the board. I'm just quoting what you said.
Okay, thank you. Well, if I
So
misspoke,
you
thank
probably
you for the correction.
made a mistake. That is what you said. So I'm saying, if the board reports to the minister, could the minister overrule a decision that is made by the board?
Overrule a decision, no. EXCO could probably give a directive. The minister can strongly suggest. But if the board makes a decision, what the minister or the government has in their power to do is to change the board.
I think they got some intertwining issues with, I guess it's not just here, that's with maybe every other entities in different countries where you have a company that has something to do with the government, and then there are people who have something to do with the government outside of the board. So I guess, they're always going to have a little conflict. So that is just my question.
No, I definitely understand, and I do acknowledge the conflict that is presented there. And Anglic is a unique situation, at least in Anguilla's context, because again, it's a private company and not a statutory body. But even within the statutory bodies, I see your concern and where the conflict can arise.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Premier, I'm not sure who is the Minister of Episcopal Affairs within your administration.
Of
Episcopal Affairs, that's like
okay,
where the
ask the
church is-
question. We'll see if we can answer you.
Beg pardon?
Ask your question. I'll see if I can answer you.
Oh, yeah. There's something out there where there are plans to take some legislation to court where a wife can take her husband to court, charging him for rape if it is done without her consent. Now, I know there's a biblical aspect to it, there's a moral aspect to it. How often does the government sit down with the church officials, or the church officials sit down with the government as relates to matters of national interest? I know when there are crime and violence, the government gets together, the Christian Council Evangelical Association, and they pray and do all type of things, asking God to come intervene. In this particular case, if we're going to be going contrary to what the Word of God said, then we are probably not doing the exact right thing. I am saying, how often will the church and the government meet and fleshing out matters of national interest that would affect us, similar to the whole question about alcohol? Because alcohol is a big issue. I had written to the Christian Council chairman and the president, and I believe the government should also consider meeting with these entities when issues of national interest comes into play here. So I'm just asking how often you all meet, or if you all meet at all.
I'll limit my response specifically to the question asked. The government of Angola meets with the church, various groups from time to time. Usually if there are issues that arise, either the government of Angola will reach out, or the various church organizations Christian organizations will reach out to the government of Angola.
So in terms of this one, what could you say?
Yeah.
Take your time.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
You prefaced, well, and I was trying not to go down that road because it sounds to me like you're saying that the ability of a husband to rape his wife is set out in the Bible.
No, I didn't say that.
So I'm trying to understand what the legislation is, how that impacts the biblical aspect that you're talking about.
No, I am saying whether or not there were any discussions between the Anguilla Christian Council, the Evangelical Association, the various church bodies, before even considering taking this taking it to the part of legislation.
What's the connection with the church and the legislation that you're speaking about?
Because whatever happens where this legislation is concerned, going to affect the church, going to affect the entire population, one way or the other. And the church, from all intents and purposes, is like the hospital. The pastors get complaints on and get more complaints than the church, than the government. So I am saying, if a matter like this had to be considered, then what is wrong with involving the Evangelical Association, the various religious bodies, bring it to the various organizations, hear the people out? That's what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. The Minister of Social Development, Honorable Shelley Rogers Webster, is not here. And so it is a question that I will take up with her, and I will ask for her to address it at the next press conference with you.
Fair enough.
Premier, if I may just add to that as well, there will be consultations held with the Anguilla Evangelical Association and the Christian Council on this legislation before it goes to the House of Assembly.
It is already decided, you know. This is a decision taken by the government. And what I'm saying, before y'all consider putting legislation in place, before y'all consider putting legislation in place, why not sit down with these various bodies, hear them out, and then put legislation in place? But to go as far as to enact legislation, put legislation in place, and then come tell me, oh, we're going to lay down Abbott Lake building, and then you're going to come and tell us after you planted lay down Abbott Lake building, everything is in place, and then come tell us you're going to lay down Abbott Lake building? And then if the majority of people in Angola say, oh, we don't want Abbott Lake building laid down, you're going to go back to the point that the premier is saying, that you think is right for a man to just rape his wife for any reason. It is not like that. Not like that.
Okay, so just to clarify, it's not new legislation that's coming. It's an adjustment to the existing legislation, which suggests that with the amendment that's being made, that if it is that a wife is of the view that she has been raped by her husband, that legal action can be taken. So, as I said, the responsible minister will be here on the next occasion, and I will ask her to address your concerns.
You see, where the Bible is concerned, two is one. Two becomes one. So I can't rape myself, and I can't charge myself for rape. So these things like these will come out. Maybe the church would want to say things like these will come out. You can't. If you're going to use that concept, you can't rape yourself. So no wife can go and say she was raped by her husband. No, they ain't gonna reach too far. They ain't gonna reach too far, because within the marriage vow that the government agrees to, within the same marriage vow, two becomes one. So how you gonna tell one he raped himself?
It should be very interesting to have this this public discussion. Yes. Yeah. All right. Unless there are any other questions, I would like to thank the public, those of you who are here present, and those of you who have joined us via social media and radio. Thank you for joining us at this government press conference, and we wish you a wonderful day and a productive week. Thank you.